My Best Friends Live in the Woods. The Adventures of Albert by Anne Michelle Moracek. Chapter 21. The Lantern Walk. And so the dove and the fish looked at each other with tears in their eyes, for they could never marry. "I will always love you," cooed the dove from her perch high in the old elm tree. "And I will always love you," said the trout with a splash and a flash of light from his beautiful jeweled scales. And at that, the dove flew away, and the trout turned his struggle upstream. They could only meet again in their dreams, where all things are possible. The end. Bluebell pulled the cover up over her little brother. "Good night, Charlie." Bluebell bent down and kissed him on the forehead. "Sweet dreams." "Just one more story, please, please, please." Charlie looked so longing at her with his beautiful blue eyes that she almost relented. "It's already past your bedtime, my sweet." Bluebell stroked his head. "But you tell such good stories," Charlie protested. "Thank you, sweet one, but I promised Mother to have you all in bed by the time she got back." Bluebell smiled. "And you wouldn't want me to disappoint Mother, now would you?" She kissed his forehead again. "Tell you what, would you like me to sing you a lullaby?" Bluebell asked as she stroked his forehead. Charlie smiled and nodded. Bluebell took a deep breath, then began.
The sea calls to me in dark mystery. I hear its voice drawing me ever to its shore. From centuries past, my fate calls me at last. I must go, I must follow, ever to the sea.
When the song was over, she kissed his forehead again. "Okay, good night." Charlie yawned and rubbed his eyes. The great moss bed was working his magic as he felt himself relaxing. "Bluebell?" Charlie reached out for her. "Yes, sweet one?" She turned and paused on her way to the kitchen. "Why do you always kiss us on the forehead?" He yawned again. "We kiss your third eye to open your spirit powers and love your soul." Bluebell smiled an adoring smile at her favorite little brother. He was the only one in the family with such intense blue eyes. Mother Skunk said the sky rejoiced when he was born and poured its brilliant blue into his spirit, and it shone through his eyes. And indeed, his spirit was light as air and as strong and steady as the sky. She started to explain more, but Charlie's eyes were closed, and a beautiful faint smile of a lovely dream was flitting across his face. "Sweet dreams, sweet one," Bluebell whispered as she tiptoed into the kitchen. Albert was sitting in front of the fire. "I put the tea kettle on." Albert smiled at Bluebell. "Thank you, dear." She smiled, but her expression was dark. Mother will be back soon, Albert reassured her. Bluebell nodded, but said nothing. Albert took a dried bundle of chamomile flowers down and skillfully ran his fingers down the stem, placing the dried leaves and flowers from his palm into the teapot. He had seen Mother do it hundreds of times. Tea? Albert offered. Thank you. Bluebell accepted the mug. They sat together in silence, sipping the steamy mug of calming brew. Then they heard footsteps and the front door being pushed open. Albert jumped up and ran to the front door. Mother Skunk was pulling in 2 large baskets, each covered with a cloth. Her gray shawl was wrapped about her shoulders, its fringe a soft frame around her. You're home! Bluebell jumped up and rushed over to greet her right behind Albert. Yes, of course, Mother said in a matter-of-fact tone, but the twinkle in her eyes showed how pleased she was that they had waited up for her. Tea is ready, Albert smiled. Excellent! Mother smiled as she pulled off her shawl and hung it on the twig by the door. What's in the baskets? Bluebell had been eyeing the 2 heavy baskets with great curiosity. A surprise for later. Mother Skunk had a merry sparkle about her. It was to be a lovely surprise indeed. But for now, I need a warm fire and that tea, she smiled. Mother Skunk trotted over to her big, overstuffed chair and eased herself in. A wince of pain flashed across her face as she hit the chair. You okay? Bluebell patted her hand. It's nothing, Mother Skunk said with a faint smile. Albert and Bluebell exchanged a worried glance. Next time you want to carry home something heavy, please ask me to come along. I can carry it for you. Albert's offer was serious as he searched her face. Thank you, dear. Mother smiled brighter. Is everyone asleep? Mother asked Bluebell. She nodded. Good. Thank you. Now off to bed with you two. She waved her hand at them, shooing them toward the bedroom. Good night, Mother. They both kissed Mother Skunk on her forehead in turn as they trotted off to sleep. Mother Skunk leaned forward, rubbed her lower back as she sipped her tea. Her gaze fell on the 2 baskets on the floor of the kitchen, just inside the front door. She set her empty mug down and drifted off to sleep. As the first soft rays of morning light began to trace across the kitchen floor, Mother Skunk was sound asleep in her chair. Bluebell soon walked out rubbing her eyes, followed by Molly and Timothy. You 2 are up early, Bluebell whispered. She put her finger to her mouth in a silence gesture and pointed at Mother, her head dropped forward, still asleep. You know, I've never seen Mother asleep, Molly whispered. Me either, Timothy whispered in disbelief. Well, she got in late last night, Bluebell exclaimed in a quiet hush. Just then, Charlie scampered out with all the boyish bounce of youthful enthusiasm. He spotted Mother Skunk in her chair, and before Bluebell could stop him, he bounded onto her lap and placed a big wet kiss on her forehead. Mother woke up with a sputter and a fleeting second of, "What is happening?" confusion. Then she saw Charlie's beaming face and felt his little hands on her cheeks. "Good morning, Mama," he said, wiggling with joy. "I'm hungry," he declared as he jumped off her lap, headed toward the kitchen. Mother Skunk laughed a big belly laugh that was so contagious they all began to giggle. "You know what Charlie's first long sentence was, don't you?" she asked Molly and Timothy. "No, what?" they giggled. "Are you gonna eat that?" Mother teased and they all laughed. One by one, the children began to wake. As each one trotted out to the kitchen, the conversations got merry and louder till the house was ringing with the clatter of breakfast bowls and spoons and chatter. Before long, the bowls were piled up to be washed. Charlie was pretending his stick toy was a great eagle and was flying it around the room. holding it above his head while he ran in circles saying, "Whoosh, zoom!" Mother Skunk looked around the room at her family and glowed with love for them. She drank in the moment to save it forever. Then she clapped her hands twice, as she did to get their quiet attention. They always stopped instantly and looked to her, so great was their love and respect. "Today I have a surprise," she announced with glee. "Albert and Bluebell, would you each bring in a basket?" They scampered to retrieve the bulging baskets that had been forgotten in the corner by the front door. The anticipation was thrilling. "I was out late last night," she began to explain, "in order to get the things we need for a celebration." All the children exchanged glances. "What celebration, Mama?" Charlie spoke up first. Mother pulled up a stool, sat, and smoothed her apron. She motioned for all her children to sit around her, tracing a half circle with her gesture in the air in front of her. There was some fussing with "scoot over" and "you stepped on my toe." But they finally settled in and turned their attention to Mother, who sat smiling. "In a week, it will be the Lantern Walk," Mother Skunk announced with an excited clap. "What is that?" they all asked, puzzled. Only Bluebell nodded. "I think I remember one when I was little." Bluebell looked at Mother for confirmation. "Yes, dear, you do," Mother beamed. "You were very little, and Papa carried your lantern for you." Mother paused and sighed. Then she clapped a happy laugh and continued. "It only takes place every 12th longest night celebration. It is a ceremony that started with the fairies." Mother settled in to explain. Charlie hopped up and began jumping his stick toy up and down on Timothy's head. "Ouch, stop it!" Timothy swatted at the toy. "It's a fairy," Charlie protested. Mother laughed. "Fairies don't jump on your brother's head." She smiled. "But they do invite all the creatures of the forest to participate in the Lantern Walk," Mother explained. "Why only once in 12 years?" Albert asked. "For the fairies, it's every year. One fairy year is 12 years for us forest folk," Mother answered. "To fairies, one of our years is one of their months." Albert's eyes were wide. "Wow," he whispered. "Wow, indeed," Mother smiled. "I wish I lived a whole year and only aged 1 month," Albert said in amazement. "It's a double-edged sword," Mother said with a serious tone. "Tell us more about the Lantern Walk." Little Jack wiggled his way to the front. "What's in the baskets?" Charlie began to lift the corner of the covering cloth, glancing up at Mother for permission. Mother laughed. "Go ahead, lift the cloth," she smiled. Charlie swung the cloth back with one swoop, tossing it back over his head with a flourish. All the excited anticipation was suddenly turned to blank stares of confused disappointment. In the baskets, they stared at piles of sticks, a ball of twine, and a large lump of beeswax. Their confusions were so bewildered it made Mother laugh a big belly laugh. "Well, you didn't think the fairies were going to deliver the lanterns by flying in through the kitchen window, did you?" She laughed. With a flash of enlightenment, Albert began to laugh along with Mother. "We're going to make our lanterns," he said, proud of his revelation. "Exactly!" Mother clapped with pleasure. "Where did you get all the wood?" Bluebell asked, amazed. "Mr. Beaver, of course," Mother smiled. "The twine was a gift from Mrs. Rabbit, and the beeswax was a trade. Mrs. Badger has quite an appetite for calendula flowers. I've been growing them all summer and drying them in bundles. I traded 2 bundles of them for the wax. Mother was so pleased with her efforts. She was smiling ear to ear. Now to work, Mother clapped. She began lifting her treasures out of the baskets and arranging the elements in neat piles on the floor. Molly and Jack, could you please unroll the ball of twine and fold it in half? We need to cut it into 2 equal lengths. When the task was done, she instructed, Now, Charlie and Bluebell, take one of the twine halves and fold it in half and cut it. Molly and Jack, do the same with your half. Again, when the task was completed, she had 2 more children take a half and cut it. Then pass the other half to 2 more children. Before long, she had them all involved, folding twine pieces and cutting them in half. After a time, Mother was pleased and clapped for silence, as they were all chattering happily with the task. Very nice job, my dears. Mother was proud of her family. They are the right size. Now, we need to melt the wax. Bluebell, I need a large pot with water in it on the fire. Once it's boiling, please put a smaller empty pot in the water. As Bluebell did as Mother instructed, she was puzzled. Mother, are we cooking a pot? Once the water boils and the smaller pot is warm, we will put the beeswax in the smaller pot to melt it slowly so it doesn't scorch. We want it to melt slowly and not get too hot, Mother explained. Once the wax was melted, she gave each child a piece of twine and instructed them to line up. Hold the twine just at the top, she demonstrated, and then dip it in the wax and pull it out. Then go to the back of the line. We will do this over and over. Why? Charlie asked. You will see the magic, Mother smiled. As they took turn after turn, they began to see the wax cling to the twine thicker and thicker until a lovely candle began to form before their eyes. It would be nice if they could be purple, Albert said, more to himself. Purple, you say? Mother's eyes sparkled. Okay, we could throw in some of the leftover dried purple carrots. I still have a few. Mother trotted over to the pantry and swung open the door. After some fussing and moving jars and bags, she trotted back triumphant. Found it! She plopped 3 dried little circles of purple carrot in the wax pot, handing Albert her stir stick. As he stirred, he began to see swirls of purple as the carrots warmed and softened. Once the wax was a lovely deep lavender, they began dipping their twine to add finishing coats of color. That was a great idea, Albert. Charlie hugged Albert around the neck. Thanks, buddy, Albert smiled. I'm hungry, Charlie announced, still holding his candle, purple drips landing on the floor. Mother glanced out the window. The sun was indeed getting low in the sky. You are right. Mother wiped her hands on a kitchen towel. She got out her clothesline and tied one end to the window frame and the other stretched across the kitchen to the hearth hook. Everyone, line up with your candles and bring them to me one at a time. As the children presented their handiwork, Mother clipped them on the line with a clothespin by the wick they had been holding. Now let's have supper while they dry. Mother ducked under the line of still dripping candles and headed again toward the pantry. She returned with a bag of blue kernels. I grew blue popcorn this summer. She opened the bag to reveal shiny jewel blue kernels. Wow! Charlie jumped up and down. All the children were excited. The long black handle of the corn popper, its round pot with the slit lid, hung on the wall, tucked just next to the pine tree. Soon it was full of oil and the beautiful blue kernels of promise. Then the whole cave was transformed with the intense fragrance of popping corn. Nothing made their tummies growl more with anticipation than this smell of popcorn. Bluebell got out the bowls, and soon they were all happily munching. Mother sat back in her big, overstuffed chair, children sitting on the floor all around, as the clothesline of drying candles hung overhead. "Tomorrow," Mother began, "the candles will be dry, and we will start making our lanterns." "Mama, tell us about the fairies. What do they have to do with the lantern walk?" Charlie laid his head on Bluebell's lap, gazing up at Mother Skunk. "Well, it was a long time ago," she began. "In the time of the first forest. You see, the great Creator made life in infinite forms. The creative power of the universe never limited, always expressing itself in love and beauty. There were great and powerful spirits with pure light for form. There were creatures with feathers and scales and fur, all perfect, all intertwined as part of the perfect whole of creation. There were creatures with leaves and deep roots, and gnomes and fairies to dwell in their shelter. The great Creator laughed, and the joy of each note turned into flowers of every color. Then the great Creator, who is both male and female, had a dream of a beautiful and perfect separation of itself into human man and woman. This creation pleased the great Creator very much. The humans frolicked and played with the fairies and gnomes and all the other creatures. Then something went wrong." Mother paused. "What, Mama, what?" Charlie asked, eyes wide. "I don't know. But this I do know. The fairies had to hide themselves from the humans. They became invisible for their own safety. But the creatures with feathers and scales and fur missed playing with their fairy friends, and they cried great tears. The great Creator saw their tears and decided to reunite the friends. The great Creator gave the fairies a gift. They could show themselves to their forest friends whenever they chose. And if any of the forest folk needed to call on the fairies' help, they just needed to light a lantern. The fairies would see the light as a beacon and come to their aid. Once a year, in fairy years, we have the celebration of the lanterns. All the forest folk light a lantern and process to the great glen. The lanterns call the fairies, and we renew our friendship and trust and dance in the moonlight." The story was so profound and so beautiful that all the children were silent, lost in their mind's eyes, each one imagining the enchanted dance of the fairies and the forest folk on the 12th longest night. Charlie crawled into Mother Skunk's lap and planted a kiss on her forehead. "I love you, Mama." "I love you, Charlie."
Chapter 21, The Lantern Walk. Discussion and questions. Destiny and Third Eye. There are some things in this life we have no control over. There are some things that simply cannot be. We have to be wise enough to recognize and accept those realities. No matter how much the dove and fish love each other, they can never find a home together. A creature of the air and one of the water have nowhere to live together. Question 1. Are there things in your life you must accept? Question 2. What actions can you take to adapt to those realities in the most beneficial way? All people have a pineal gland. It is a pea-sized gland shaped like a pine cone, located in the middle of the brain. Through its awakening, I believe, we are able to attain an intimate connection with God and attain abilities of telepathy and psychic vision. Exposure to processed junk foods, toxic chemicals in the environment, and fluoride in the water can calcify and damage the pineal gland. Question 3. Are you drinking pure, clean water without fluoride to clean your pineal gland? Question 4. Are you using only organic cleaning and healthcare products? Question 5. Are you eating organic, whole foods?
I am the composer and performer for all the music in this video. Both audio recordings and the printed scores are available on mybestfriendsliveinthe.woods.com. I will provide the link below. The painted illustrations are also my creation. Prints are available on mybestfriendsliveinthe.woods.com. This is a novel. The chapters are meant to be heard in the order in which they were written. And while each chapter can stand alone, they do build as new characters are introduced and past events are referred to. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. The chapters are numbered, so if you're just joining us, be sure to go back and watch from chapter 1.
In a dream, in a trance, my spirit flies to the pink horizon of the forest, where fairies say, come and play, and the animals say, there's a better way, an enchanted land of love.